Disclaimer.
What was your I fucked up moment? I managed to destroy a $4,000 piece of test equipment by connecting the wrong leads. For the briefest of moments, the screen showed an overvoltage warning. That's when I knew. If it makes you feel better, my husband bought a bit of software to test and forgot to cancel it. A year later and $70,000 he had to fess up to his boss. Luckily his boss said, "Don't worry, I'll spin it as efficiency savings." What a fucking angel. I threw away a cashier's check for $50,000. I didn't think it would be a big deal, didn't understand the difference between a cashier's check and a regular check. We had thrown the trash in the dumpster at work, so my dad and I went down around midnight and tore open all the garbage bags in the dumpster before we found it. Holy shit, glad you found it. What's a cashier's check and why do you throw it? Instead of cash, it's a check from the bank for that amount. My dad had sold some property, got the money, and because he didn't have a personal checking account at the time, he had the bank cut me a cashier's check for the amount. I threw it away purely on accident. When I realized it, I went and told him I needed a new one, thinking he could just get a new one and void the original, like with a personal check. My credit union used to do cashier's checks as a service for free, so I used to use them to pay rent. I loved them because once cut the money was gone and I didn't worry about bouncing a check. I read a manifest wrong and pumped the wrong chemical down an oil well and literally ruined a brand new well worth about $4 million. They had to abandon it. I'm a research chemist and dropped a small lump of sodium hydride. It has the consistency of moist fine sand but also can set itself on fire if there's too much humidity on the floor. This lump must have landed on a singular drop of water as it instantly burst into flames and launching little flamey blobs everywhere. Thankfully it was small enough that it burned out in a few seconds and I deny any knowledge of the little scorch mark on the lab floor. That sounds like something I would like to see in a controlled environment. I worked in a commercial kitchen. I had just finished making and plating hundreds of deviled eggs. As I moved them into the walk-in, the cartwheels caught on the lip and sent all of them straight on the floor. Edit. Forgot to mention, this was the first day with the new head chef. I was carrying a huge tray of mac and cheese for dinner for 62 people, besides some salad, the only dinner, and spilled all of it on the floor with everyone waiting in line watching me, plates in their hand waiting for food to arrive. I was working at a nice breakfast restaurant. I was running the meat grill. I was told it's pretty slow, I can go home 3 hours early if I cook up 2 cases of bacon. I powered that out in no time, beautiful looking bacon and the sausages were piled high too. I'm wrapping up at still 3.5 hours before I'm scheduled off. I'm in a great mood, I'm about to get a free night off. I clean the grill, it's spotless, everything is done. I grab the bucket of bacon grease to empty it as my final task and it catches the lip of the cart. An entire bucket of bacon grease goes everywhere. I did not leave 3 hours early. I once spilled a 5-gallon bucket of used fryer oil in the back room of the grocery store where I worked. We had to work a few hours overtime to clean it up. I felt so stupid after. I once had one of the servers come back to the kitchen at a restaurant I was a line cook at and told me that a customer wanted to know why their fish and chips tasted like burnt rubber. With a confused look on my face, I said I had no clue. Then out of curiosity, I looked down into the fryer, and sure enough there was a chef knife with a rubber handle laying at the bottom of the fryer slowly melting. Oops. I wasn't there to see it, but on my day off, someone dropped a pallet of eggs. That's roughly 8,650 eggs. I don't know what percentage broke. But it was quite a mess. They had to power wash the forklift outside. Used to downhill skate pretty regularly, took my time and had some safe spots away from traffic. Took a tumble once and popped up on my feet but my right leg crumbled. Looked down and my right foot was doinked 9-0 to the left. I done fucked up was running through my head 100x every second for weeks. Almost happened to me, no helmet and smacked the pavement. Broke my skull but miraculously survived, 4 days bleeding out my ear in the hospital, 6 weeks of triple vision, years of recovery, but I have very few ongoing issues. That was my I fucked up moment, boy did I get lucky. Edit, since I've had several questions about the triple vision I'll elaborate. I don't understand why or how it worked, but I was seeing 3 of everything. Neurologists told me my eyesight could go back to normal in a couple weeks, months, or maybe even a year. They said after a year, if it hadn't gone back to normal, then it would most likely be permanent. It was lucky this happened when I was 19 because my brain was still developing, so it was able to create new connections. If it had happened 10 years later, then the damage certainly would have been permanent. I was riding electric scooters with some friends and they thought to ride down a hill covered in potholes. I hit a pothole going like 20 miles per hour and got some air. This was the I fucked up moment. It was like the intro to a movie. Slow mo, me midair. You're probably wondering how I got in this situation. My shoulder took most of the impact and broke in 2 places. It still hurts some days, even years later. After landing and moving to a bench nearby, my vision just completely went for 1 minute or so. I broke my jaw using a rental e-scooter last year. Wasn't going fast, but the back tire was crap, and braking while turning ended with me jaw first on asphalt. One morning, I was making cinnamon rolls and following the recipe, or so I thought. I pull my first batch of 30 out of the oven, and the owner comes by for a taste. She takes 1 bite, spits it out, and asks me what my process was. I told her I doubled the recipe as she requested, so 14 TBSP of cinnamon. Problem. That number I thought was a 7, was in fact a 1. This is only tangentially similar, but when I was in like 8th grade I tried to treat my parents by making meatloaf. We were eating and they said it tasted weird and asked what I put in it. I listed off the ingredients including garlic, and they asked where I got the garlic. Well, from the shelf at the bottom of the pantry, of course. It was not garlic. It was tulip bulbs. That was the day I learned tulip bulbs can be poisonous if consumed. We were all okay though. Just me being a silly goose. I was a lead in a play for a theater company, came down with an intense cough, decided to see a doctor. They prescribed me a cough suppressant. I figured if the recommended dose worked, then more than the recommended dose would work even better. Drank half a bottle of DXM syrup 2 hours before going on stage and accidentally had an out-of-body experience in front of a full house. I was young, naive, and very high. Director wasn't too happy about it. I decided to scrape out old, stale brownies that had hardened to the pan with a knife. The thought flicked through my mind a fraction of a second before the knife slipped out of the pan and plunged into the center of my palm. Side note, after that, the knife was always darker where it had been inside my hand. Anyone know why? Another side note, 5 years later, guy broke in my house and tried to kill me with that very same knife. This was years ago, and I still think about it sometimes. I was sleeping over at a friend's house, and when I woke up in the morning, I thought it would be funny to sit on his cat. I was 10. As if this wasn't already a stupid idea, I pulled my pants down. I want you to picture this, a fat 10-year-old dipshit, about to press his bare ass into a cat, and tell me how well it's going to go. After being scratched in the ass, I went home crying, and stood outside for a few minutes until my mom woke up and let me in, giving me a quick bath, because I was bleeding. It wouldn't be until a few years later that I found out she was convinced my friend's stepdad violated me, which definitely didn't help my mom's schizophrenia. I fucked up. I locked myself in an empty jail. I was reviewing a job site at 5 p.m. on a Friday, and I was the last guy there. My cell phone had just ran out of battery. It was a new county courthouse in the USA, and it was nearly complete. I was checking door functionality, mechanical function only. The whole building had electric security on each door, but it was turned off. I had a master keycard and an actual door key to override the door locks, just in case. At one point I mindlessly walked into a side chamber of the main courtroom. I realize it's the detainee lobby. As I turn back I hear the door click shut. I tried the electric keycard that I had. It didn't work because no electric face with steam from nose. I tried the regular key that I had, and the lock didn't work properly. I tried again. Nothing. And again, nothing. And again a few more times. It still doesn't work. I bang on the door and shout for help for a few minutes. It's useless, no one's there. I try the door lock a few more times. It doesn't work. There is approximately 62 hours until anyone was supposed to be at the job site again. I fucked up. I didn't want to, but I ended up kicking the door, and after a few minutes it broke. It broke around the lock, with the lock staying connected to the frame. Everyone laughed at me on Monday. Edit: the door between the detainee lobby and the courtroom was a heavy solid wood door and not as secure as the detainee cell doors. That's because the policy was always to have a sheriff with the detainee when in that room. Now that's a story, haha. But we had some cases here in my country where it wasn't that funny, like with the old doors of the freezer rooms that some buildings have, like where a butcher works. Some unlucky guys got locked in these freezers and died there by hypothermia in the old times, like the 60s to 80s. Today, every of these doors can be unlocked from inside. That's a safety measure that was introduced after the guys turned into a glacier mummy. It was the same with machines. Today you have here in Europe so many safety measures and protocols that we rarely have accidents. But when you see the videos from China, where workers get sucked into machines, it was the same here in the old times. It still happens sometime, like at the factory where a friend works. Some Asian guy was really able to accidentally slip his hand under a blade. The machine has a barrier, but his hand was so tiny, like that of a kid, that he could slide underneath the barrier, and then the blade cut off his fingers. You can also watch other videos by going to the channel. I will be pleased if you like them.